Facebook is under fire after admitting a political data firm improperly received access to profile data from tens of millions of users and used it to try to sway voting habits.
Cambridge Analytica, a UK data firm hired by the Trump campaign, is mired in a scandal after a whistleblower claims the company misled Facebook users in order to collect their personal data.
It was only until 2016, when I was working at CIA and setting it up, you don't appreciate the future impact of what your work is until it starts to happen. And so 2016 was, where I started looking at what this company was actually doing in the United States, and coming to appreciate that the projects that I was working on may have had a much wider impact than I initially anticipated it would.
Hello, we're Group 1, and this is our project for engineering ethical violations. We'll be doing our project on Cambridge Analytica data scandal. In this scandal, millions of users' data was used without their explicit consent in order to try to convince the voting public to view their clients in a more favorable way. Cambridge Analytica was started by its parent company, Strategic Communication Laboratories, who started off by basically doing psychological warfare in the 90s in developing nations. And that means basically they were providing propaganda to militaries to be used against their enemies. Just for a kind of view on what this company's like, there's an example of them doing that. Also, the CEO is the kind of guy who was boasting about blackmailing politicians and other people who opposed his research.
Main ethical issues reside in Alexander Cohen, a Cambridge research associate who developed an AI-based software disguised as a personality test that users would take, and it would collect and store their interests as well as personality determined by their previous liked posts on Facebook. Cambridge Analytica later sold this data along with identifying information bought from Facebook without the user's knowledge or consent. This information was later used in politically charged targeted ads targeted at individuals using the identifying personal data obtained. The sale of data in its own is commonplace, but when accompanied by identifying personal information, it's highly unethical as well as illegal, as it can be used for targeted propaganda and malpractice designed for individual consumers.
Now let's talk about the specific technical ethical violations. So 2 things that they did violate 2 ethical guidelines. So engineers shall not approve of designs that shall only approve of designs that safeguard the life, health, welfare, and property of the public while conforming to engineering standards. And the second one, engineers shall not associate in business ventures nor permit their names or their firm's names to be used in any person or firm which is engaging in dishonest, fraudulent, or illegal business activity. So because Cambridge Analytica had users download software through a third-party Facebook app to create personality profiles of users and target their friends with political ads while collecting their personal data without the user's knowledge or consent, this was an ethical violation in their engineering duty to society because they did not protect the data, also known as property of consumers.
Hazards and potential hazards to the public. In short, harvesting information on people in this way could be disastrous to the public. In politics, it can be used to manipulate political outcomes and unfairly skew results in favor of those who are willing to use these methods. This could eventually result in a complete corruption of government, where the only elected officials were people who were willing to spend the money.
And it is important to be an ethical engineer society. And this is because being an ethical engineer allows the ability to push back against decisions that can harm society for the benefits of the few. And in this case, the targeted advertisers and stuff. But another thing is products engineers make are for the better of society. And then they have to be at the highest quality. You see, engineers shape society, and then those products that go out to society affect everyone else inside. So being an ethical engineer is extremely important as we shape the world. And just a quick little recap. The scandal also originated in 2013, and by that I mean the main culprit was, like I said before, Alexander Kogan, when they created the app "This Is Your Digital Life." You see, Facebook did not give a public statement about a data breach that happened with "This Is Your Digital Life." This is also renamed to Cambridge Analytica, as we all know it, and this resulted in the data of 87 million people being compromised. This is because they were not told about the terms and conditions of the application. You see, by being an ethical engineer, we can stop situations like this. And as Jordan said before, these events can skew society for the better or for the worse.
In conclusion, the Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal exposed an unethical practice in IoT and the social media space. It affected millions of Facebook users and had impact on several political voting outcomes all over the world, not just America. That's just the one that we hear about since we live here. They were also used in places in Africa and the UK as well. The way that the Cambridge Analytica collected and used the data of their consumers was unethical and wrong, and as engineers, we should not do that. Here are our resources. And thank you.